And welcome to the latest Royal Roundup from TalkTV. So pop the kettle on, this is The Royalty. I'm Sarah Hewson. Coming up today, the sad news that Thomas Kingston, the husband of Lady Gabriella Kingston, has died. Why Prince William mysteriously pulled out of an engagement earlier this week, and Prince Harry loses in court but vows to obtain justice. Joining me today to discuss all that and more are the royal editor at The Times, Kate Mansey, making her royalty debut. Hello to you, Kate. And Newsweek's chief royal correspondent, Jack Royston. Now, earlier this week, Prince William unexpectedly pulled out of attending the memorial service for the late former King Constantine of Greece, where he'd been due to give a reading. Kensington Palace said this was because of a personal matter. Kate, you were there outside St George's Chapel for this memorial service, waiting for the arrival of the Prince of Wales when the news came through that actually he wasn't going to be there.
That's right. So we were leafing through the order of service, which had his name, of course, because he was due to give a reading. King Constantine II was William's godfather, and William's name was there. Prince of Wales was due to give the second reading at the service of the late king, the last king of Greece, who died last year. He was a huge character. They all called him King Con or Tino, and he was great mates, a former sailing partner and first cousin once removed of Prince Philip. So this was a big deal. You know, we had royals flying in from Amman, the royalty from Jordan. We had, the King of Spain flying in. William, who lives very close by in Adelaide Cottage, was a no-show. We were told it was for a personal matter had detained him. No further information was provided. And instead, Crown Prince Pavlos stepped in and gave that reading instead, but had to give a little kind of précis to say why, he was doing it on behalf of the Prince of Wales. So it was a huge mystery, and it became sort of the story of the day, didn't it?
Yeah, it really did, Jack. And look, everyone's entitled to their privacy and a personal life, but I think the backdrop to this, with the King being off with his cancer treatment, with the Princess of Wales recovering from her abdominal surgery, everyone's very concerned and jittery. And so something like this happens, and it really does ring alarm bells.
And of course, everybody immediately rushed to assume that it was probably related to one of those two things, either Kate or the King. Now, obviously, the palace said that Kate's recovery is still doing well, so they're trying to rule out any kind of sudden dip in her recovery. I also understand that it is not related to the King's cancer, and also we had Queen Camilla, who did go to that memorial service. So I think that is correct. But I think what the palace need to be really careful of here is it's starting to look, they're being very secretive about quite a lot of things. Now, I'm completely willing to believe that something may well have sprung up in William's life that he has a genuine right to keep private. But the palace, I think, need to now work overtime to be as candid and open about absolutely everything that they can be candid and open about, and just really assume that you tell everybody what's going on unless there's a really good reason not to.
Because I don't know about you, but my WhatsApps have been going mad this week. Social media has gone into overdrive with people saying, oh, what's happened? Where's Kate? What's gone on?
And you've got to remember, this is where young people are now. Young people aren't reading print newspapers. Young people are on TikTok and they're on Twitter. And my Twitter timeline was literally nothing other than people talking about where's Kate. The whole thing could go away with one little picture of her.
Yeah, I mean, Kensington Palace were pretty upfront, weren't they, when they put out the statement about her surgery, Kate, that she was going to be recuperating at home and she wouldn't be back to work until after Easter. So I guess from their point of view, they said, well, nothing's changed.
That's right, and I think we're going to see William today, and we might, I guess, talk about that in a bit. But we'll see him today, and I think he will. He's going to get well card, I believe, from the people that he's meeting today for Kate. So that might come up in conversation after we've recorded this show. But I think you're right. It's that secrecy that people feel like they haven't seen her, and that the problem with the kind of PR strategy of saying nothing at all is that people try and fill that vacuum on social media, and then conspiracy theories abound. But at a time when you've got the King off public duties, you've got Queen Camilla stepping in, and then for William to pull out at such short notice, the message from the palace loud and clear was, nobody panic. But of course, that makes people panic in and of itself, doesn't it?
And also, you talked about the vacuum. Okay, we have to look at the optics of this, because Camilla, as the most senior royal, arrived last. She was driven to St George's Chapel. The other members of the royal family walked there.
And I have a feeling I know what you're about to say.
You know where
next.
I'm going with this. And we have the Duke of York leading the royals into church.
Looks terrible. Because also I think we were kind of, it should really have been Camilla leading the royal procession. For some reason she arrived separately. It's not totally clear to me why, but then obviously someone like Prince Andrew, you give him an inch, he takes a mile, you give him the
sharp elbows out the door first.
Elbows, yes, exactly. The minute he sniffs an opportunity to kind of put himself at the front and centre and try and, show himself as being back in the fold, he'll obviously take it. And it's a terrible look for them, because we all know, it's barely even need saying, we all know the accusations against him. He denies them, but he also settled the Epstein case out of court.
He looked rather too pleased to be there, didn't he? I mean, bear in mind it's a memorial service, and a lot of the Greek royal family turned up in very sombre kind of navy blue or black. And he looked rather kind of pleased with himself, chest puffed out. I mean, it is protocol for the Queen to be the last person in, the most senior person to be in. So that was sort of fair enough, I suppose. But he might have let Princess Anne, lead the way. And it's nice to see Sarah Ferguson, though, looking so jolly and well, because she's had breast cancer and skin cancer. And I think there is a lot of affection for her, in the public. She's quite a character, and she was there chatting to the Dean of Windsor afterwards and all that sort of stuff. So, but... we in the Times we ran a kind of who's who, the picture from inside the St George's Chapel, and did kind of numbered who was who, but it's quite slim pickings. You've got, the Gloucesters representing the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester. And they're of an age now, Princess Anne in her 70s, and you do sort of think this is the slimmed down monarchy that, be careful what you wish for.
70 now, and of course Kate's not there, and William wasn't there on the day. Kate, you mentioned about William being back on duty today. As we're recording, he's visiting a synagogue. And this follows on from his statement that he made about the conflict in the Middle East. What's the purpose of this engagement today?
Yeah, so this is the second of two engagements as part of this intervention that he's doing in the Middle East. So last week we saw him at the British Red Cross, and he was kind of Zoom calling with humanitarian aid workers on the ground in Gaza. It was quite moving. And just before he did that engagement, he announced that statement. He gave that statement out, which really was quite strongly worded, carefully worded, but very strongly worded. And the fact that such a senior member of the royal family saying anything at all on the matter is quite extraordinary. He was the first royal member of the royal family to go out to Gaza several years ago. So he has experience in this area. But today he's going to be visiting a synagogue. He's going to be hearing about anti-Semitism in the UK. He's going to be meeting with Holocaust survivors. So again, I think it's going to be very powerful. But questions abound, is this an area that he should be, getting involved with? Anyway, we'll see him in Wales. We expect to see him in Wales on Friday this week for St David's Day. People might think that might be the sort of thing you expect from the Prince of Wales, whether intervening in, conflict in the Middle East, is something he should do. That is a very contentious issue.
I think what's really interesting with a really controversial issue like the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and make no mistake, it is pretty much the most controversial issue in international politics. The monarchy, if they're going to go anywhere near it, have to make some effort to introduce balance. And so the job that we have today is the balance to the job that we had last week. So the job that we had last week was very much focused on the Palestinian experience on the ground in Gaza.
Talking to aid workers
and the extreme suffering that Palestinians have been going to. So this job today is about anti-Semitism targeting Jewish people. I think it's going to be predominantly Jewish people in Britain. I think it's going to be quite UK focused. So it's quite interesting that William's creating that balance through the experiences of Jewish people in Britain rather than through the experiences of, rather than through anything that's supportive of the Israeli government's position. It does seem that William has hardened his view of Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli government and the way that they've conducted this war. So I think he will be trying to show Jewish communities in Britain that he is supportive of them and understands what they're going through. But it's very clear that he has major reservations of the way that Netanyahu is conducting this war.
Now, Thomas Kingston, the husband of Lady Gabriella Kingston, son-in-law of Prince and Princess Michael of Kent, has died at the age of 45. King Charles and Queen Camilla sent their most heartfelt thoughts and prayers to his family. Now, this announcement, Kate, came on the same day as the memorial service for King Constantine of Greece, and actually quite remarkably, now knowing what we know, Prince and Princess Michael of Kent were there in the congregation.
Yes, that's right. So Tom Kingston's parents-in-law, his mother and father-in-law, Prince and Princess Michael of Kent, were there in the congregation, which must have been very tough for them to go to a memorial service, knowing what they'd been through, because the body was found on Sunday at a home in Gloucestershire. Emergency services were called just after 6 p.m, but nothing could be done, sadly, and he died aged 45. Now, he married Gabriella Windsor, Lady Gabriella Windsor, just a few years ago in 2019, big service, attended by the late Queen Elizabeth, loads of members of the royal family there, because of course Prince Michael was first cousin of Queen Elizabeth II, so very much part of the family, and as such, Tom Kingston became part of the family and was much loved. And you could see from the statement that the palace put out on Tuesday evening that the whole family is grieving the loss, and so tragic at such a young age.
Yeah, a massive shock to the whole family. And although the name of Tom Kingston might not be that familiar to everybody, as Kate described, he was very much a part of the extended family. You'd see him on the balcony at Ascot with the King and Queen.
Laughing with the King and Queen, watching the horses. It looked like they were winning in the picture that I saw, hopefully anyway. No, of course, there are lots of people who are very much within the royal circle who may not have a huge public profile, because that's not how monarchy works, but it doesn't mean that they're not important figures to the family. And I think the importance that Tom Kingston had to the royals is very clear from how quickly Buckingham Palace took kind of ownership of telling people this very sad news. And absolutely no qualms at all about the King and Queen expressing their grief, as well as their support for the whole of the Kent family, including obviously Lady Gabriella, who grew up with William and Harry as well. She's a very important figure to them. The Kents live next door to Princess Diana and Charles at Kensington Palace, so the kids all grew up together, and have obviously huge fond memories from that period for her. So they're going to be, I'm sure, very concerned for how this must be affecting her. I mean, she must be absolutely devastated. 45 is so young.
Yeah, and for her to become a widow at just, I think she's 42, isn't she? But Kate, Kensington Palace clarified that actually, Tom Kingston's death wasn't the reason why Prince William wasn't at the service earlier this week, because that was one of the theories that might have been considered at that point.
That's right. So then we had the clarification that in fact it wasn't connected to the personal matter that led William to miss that memorial service, which again, that other mystery has not been solved.
King Charles wasn't at the service as well, as he continues with his cancer treatment, but he's also continuing with his royal duties this week as he approved changes to royal assent procedure. It means the introduction of legislation can be expedited through the granting of royal assent by His Excellency the Lieutenant Governor. I guess, Jack, this is the King getting on with the constitutional duties behind closed doors. Now, he was at Windsor earlier in the week. He left and then returned to Clarence House, the normal cycle, undergoing his treatment once a week, for example. But we also had the cards, the images of him looking at the cards that he'd been sent, released by Buckingham Palace. There seems to be a real effort to continue to show him and to show him looking well.
Yeah, and he did look, there were warm images, warm footage of him there going through those cards, and it's been an outpouring of support for him. Only they truly know how he's doing, and he did in his previous meeting with Rishi Sunak. I think you could see that it has hit him quite hard. Sunak said he looked great, and Charles said it's all mirrors, it's an illusion, and the fact he said, he was brought to tears most of the time by many of these get well soon cards shows it's had a huge impact on him. I mean, the business about royal assent, we have been told that Charles is continuing with his state duties, of which granting royal assent is arguably one of the key duties that he has been continuing to do while he receives treatment for cancer. And yet we're also now being told that there's a new system being created that will allow it to be done by somebody else without calling on councillors of state. So, I think that people will be very supportive of Charles doing that, and everybody's just going to be hoping that his recovery goes well.
And meanwhile, Queen Camilla continuing to hold the fort, leading the family and hosting that service at St George's Chapel, but multiple other engagements this week, Kate, including a meeting with Ukraine's First Lady today.
That's right. So she received Ukraine's First Lady. So this is real kind of statesman level stuff, isn't it, that we're seeing Camilla. I mean, I don't really like the phrase stepping up, but she really is. And she really has been kind of front and centre of the royal family. And this is somebody who 30 years ago, you would never have dreamed, A, that she'd be queen and titled as such, and B, that she would be, you know, the most prominent member of the royal family on duty day in, day out. And she's done marvellously. I mean, I've been at a few of the events that she was at. I was at Clarence House when she had the kind of worshipful company of fan makers. So she was there being enthroned as part of that society. And she just gives these off-the-cuff kind of speeches. She's very confident. She joined the family, you know, in her 50s. And she seems to
She's lived her own life, and I think you see that in the way she conducts herself.
And she's
in
this
the
kind
engagements.
it's this kind of awful phrase that we have nowadays, where she's so authentic, her authentic self. But she really is, you know, she's sort of, she is what you see, what you get, sort of thing.
She does know how to talk to ordinary people. Which
Yes,
I know that sounds obvious, but actually it's not a given, is it?
She gives on these royal engagements, and that's really what people want. They want a chance to have a kind of moment and a moment of connection with royal family members. But I mean, it's a huge weight on Camilla's shoulders, and like you say, completely unthinkable. Beyond 30 years ago, it's completely unthinkable 5 years ago. And, you know, you've got to remember, this is her husband as well.
Yes.
So it's going to be a huge emotional pressure on her behind the scenes. Also, she will, you know, be concerned for Kate and Kate's recovery. So they're all going through a huge amount. And she hasn't taken any time off for it, and she's still back out there working.
And this meeting with Elena Zelenska today, coming after the King released a statement over the weekend expressing his support for the people of Ukraine on the 2-year anniversary of Russia's invasion.
It's a huge alliance for Britain, and Ukraine has clearly been very grateful for the important role that Britain has played in ensuring that they get the support they need. And I think you can see it often with overseas leaders when they do have a huge amount of respect for the British monarchy. And I think President Zelensky is one of those world leaders who clearly values the British monarchy and clearly likes the British royals. So I think he will be hugely, pleased to see the statement, and also pleased that, you know, his wife is meeting Camilla and being, you know, having the red carpet rolled out for her.
Now, Prince Harry has lost a High Court challenge against the government over the level of his security in the UK. The Duke of Sussex failed to overturn a previous ruling which saw his security status downgraded after he stopped being a working royal. The High Court found the decision was neither unlawful nor irrational. Kate, a big blow for Prince Harry yesterday. This has been a long-running legal battle against the Home Office and that decision to downgrade his security when he and Meghan moved away from the UK.
You know, journalists are very shy to blow their own trumpet, but I did break that story in January 2022, which tells you it's been going on for more than 2 years, that he's been suing the British government. He said, essentially, you've got the law wrong. You shouldn't have downgraded my security. It doesn't matter that I left royal duties. The threat remains the same. I'm still in line to the throne. You know, I'm still Prince Harry. And there have been people who are convicted for, you know, plotting to do him harm and who do wish him harm. You know, obviously he served in Afghanistan on 2 tours of duty.
So, he talked about in the this recent case, he talked about the threats from Al-Qaeda, didn't he, following the publication of his book Spare. We also know, don't we, from Neil Basu, the former head of counter-terror policing at the Metropolitan Police, about the threats from the right wing towards Meghan in particular.
And it also came up in the court documents that dropped yesterday as part of this judgment, which said that he had lost his bid to have the security reinstated every time he visits Britain. But we also learned a bit more about that paparazzi car chase in New York, if you remember, where they said they'd been chased and there was a big thing saying that they'd maybe overblown it. Well, it transpires that there was enough evidence to arrest 2 of the the paparazzi photographers, I think, who were in chase. I don't think
relentless pursuit, I think, was the wording.
So a bit more of that came out because obviously they'd used that as part of their argument that this should be reinstated. But nevertheless, it was ruled that perhaps, no, he won't be able to have that. So yesterday the Sussexes said that they would launch an appeal. A legal spokesman acting for the Duke of Sussex said that they would appeal and they would hope to obtain justice in the Court of Appeal. So it's not ended quite yet.
No, it hasn't, and it's going to be very expensive as well, isn't it?
You've got to remember that Harry is already on the line to pay the Mail on Sunday something in the ballpark of 750 grand. This is estimated to be another £1 million. That's $2.2 million in American money. I had a quick look on Zillow, and there are no homes in the neighbourhood that Meghan grew up in for $2.2 million. There are no homes with that amount of money. It is a humongous amount of money that he's burning through here. The appeal will push that price tag up even further, and it's going to completely obliterate the damages he's being paid in the cases that he's won. You know, he got paid something, I think it was £140,000 for in the first round of his phone hacking lawsuit against the Mirror. Obviously, that's going to be completely obliterated by this. Now, Harry, he has flung a large number of allegations around at different people. And one thing that was interesting in the judgment is some of those have been shown to not be entirely true. For example, he accused the Queen's most senior aide, Edward Young, of failing to pass on his offer to pay for his own police protection. And now in this judgment we saw, in fact, the Cabinet Secretary, one of the most senior figures in government, head of the civil service, discussing that the royal household had asked about that, and he said no. He just simply said no on the very day that Harry raised it at Sandringham with his family for the first time. It was discussed that day. Also, Harry was, sent a very angry letter to Mark Sedwell, the Cabinet Secretary, saying, I want answers about why you didn't consult me. I want to know whose responsibility it was that who made this decision. I want their name. At the same time as this all was happening, COVID was spreading in Britain for the first time. The date that letter was sent, we had 8 cases of COVID. Mark Sedwell was a key figure in organising the British government's response to a pandemic that round about this time, senior figures were warning could have killed up to 600,000 people. So I think Harry is getting to the point where he's going to have to just let this go and understand that a decision was taken and he doesn't like it, but he's got to let this end.
That letter to Mark Sedwell was testament to the frustration. I mean, you can hear it in every word on the page, can't you, Kate, that Harry was feeling at the time, just ahead of the Sandringham summit, I believe. And he also cited his late mother's example and said that the threat to he and Meghan, because of racism now, was actually greater than the threat to his mother was.
That's right, and any kind of reference to Diana brings back those awful memories, doesn't it? And there was another argument that he used as part of this court case, which I thought was really interesting, which is he said that if anything happened to him, if he was kidnapped or killed in some awful way, that it would negatively impact upon the nation, upon the UK, that the country hadn't done enough to support the royal family in that way or support him in that way, which is it's a kind of poignant argument, really. And the same with Diana, it evokes all those emotions, doesn't it, from 1997.
And actually it's interesting because we had a lot of callers into various programmes that I was on yesterday expressing that feeling that might not agree with what Harry has done and what he said, but ultimately he can't help the family he was born into. He is the son of the king, and what would it look like if we allowed something to happen? And I was quite intrigued actually by that, the nuance in that argument, that it wasn't a blanket, well, I don't want to be paying as a taxpayer for his security. Ultimately though, Kate, it's not that he doesn't have security at all, does it?
No.
He does get it when he applies for it on a case-by-case basis.
Exactly.
It's not
that.
automatic.
So they've not said, we'll never protect you when you come to Britain. They said it's a case-by-case basis. It depends what you're here to do. Let us know. We'll figure it out, and that you will, have access to Scotland Yard security on some occasions. For example, if you're coming here to, visit the King on some sort of official business, then I expect that would all be covered. But it's not good enough. He wants it to, to have it every single time. I have some sympathy with that because we don't know a lot of these security decisions. We know this now because obviously he's raised it and it's gone through the courts. Having said that, a lot of the case was held in camera, so it was all, we don't know the ins and outs.
And much was redacted from the documents that were released yesterday.
Exactly, but there are lots of cases where us, the taxpayers, are funding foreign nationals who come here because there seems to be a legitimate threat and because they don't want them to be targeted and civilians to be embroiled in anything. So there's lots that goes on that we do fund security. So I do have some some sympathy with him on this one.
There was one line that I wonder if it wasn't quite meant as it came across from Prince Harry, or from his legal argument anyway, which was talking about when he and Meghan travelled on a train to Manchester in 2022, and they were concerned about the proximity of the public to them. I mean, being a member of the royal family is all about meeting the public.
It's also very difficult because the Queen used to get the train up to King's Lynn to go to Sandringham every winter, every December, and she could very easily have made other arrangements, taxi, helicopter, whatever. But she made sure that she always showed the public that she wasn't afraid to be around them. I think that Harry takes a very hard line to this issue of security. That if he has the police officers with him, he is protected. If they're not with him, then he isn't, and he's in danger, and he could lose his life. I wonder if he might be slightly too binary and too hardline about that. It's resulted in situations like, for example, at the Platinum Jubilee, they were offered police protection if they have an invitation from the royal family to an official event, then they get offered police protection. So they had the police protection only for the Platinum Jubilee events that they were invited to. And as a result, outside of those events, they didn't leave Frogmore Cottage. And I just think that might be too hard line. Obviously, if somebody is going to target them, they need to plan that operation. They need to know where Harry is going to physically be in order to execute it. And they need to know all that ahead of time so that they can make sure that they're there. And what Harry has actually done with this lawsuit is it's a massive international advert for the fact that he doesn't have police protection in a context where a lot of people would not have actually known that. So I think that he has so much cover from the fact that people don't know where he's going to be from day to day. I actually think that he's in a pretty good position. And he's made his position more unsafe by advertising this fact.
Now, earlier in the week, former President Donald Trump hinted that he could deport Prince Harry if he's re-elected, warning the Duke of Sussex he will not protect him like Joe Biden. Now, Kate, this is all part of the lawsuit that's going on in the United States, the Heritage Foundation trying to get access to Harry's immigration records. And Donald Trump says, well, I wouldn't give him a hand. I wouldn't be covering for him.
I think this was it was quite funny, wasn't it? The comments by Trump. I mean, what this tells us, by whether Trump would ever do it or not, I don't know. But he's a great self-publicist and obviously knows how to get the headlines, doesn't he? Quite easily. He
also loves the royal family, doesn't he?
He also loves the royal family. But what's interesting about this comment, I think, is that you will start to wonder what the view is about Harry and Meghan in the US. Now, Donald Trump's populist. He's after votes. He's not going to say something where people are going to turn against him and say, well, that's an awful thing to say about someone who's a member of the royal family. He's going to say something because he's going to think that a lot of people will agree with him. So does this comment mean that, perhaps the perception of them in America has changed in recent years? I mean, there was a lot of goodwill when they first went out there, even after that Oprah Winfrey interview that they gave. But subsequently, I wonder if there's all this chipping away, a lot of the criticism, that's now seems to have dried up slightly, but it's already been said. I wonder if that has, played negatively with the American public.
I mean, there's certainly no love lost between Meghan in particular and Trump, is there? I mean, she described him as being divisive and misogynistic, and he then in turn said she was nasty.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I think Donald Trump is a complete wild card. If you look at the various people he pardoned when he was president the last time round, he is a law unto himself, and he doesn't have that kind of respect and reverence for the rules. So it's entirely possible that he could try to get involved, but the Department of Homeland Security may just not want, will they just do whatever Trump tells them? They might not. They might put up resistance. I think Harry should be a little bit worried about it, though. In terms of US attitudes to Harry and Meghan, they had a big collapse in their support base in America in January after Spare came out, January 2023. Harry has substantially repaired his reputation with the American public since then, including Republicans who were slower to come back to the flock. Meghan, though, is still significantly less popular in America than Harry, William and Kate. I think Meghan is probably Trump's kind of bigger target, but Harry is the one who's kind of there, sat in front of him, waiting to be had a go at.
Yeah, and this week, actually, videos emerged of Meghan cooking traditional Afghan food with a group of 15 women who'd resettled in the US from Afghanistan. The Duchess of Sussex created the Welcome Project in 2023 as part of her work with the Archwell Foundation. We also saw her appearing via video link in London to open a new wing of an animal charity in honour of a late friend of hers. We've had Harry appearing in a video for the Well Child Awards this week. I mean, that's the good stuff that they want to be known for, isn't it? Unfortunately, the headlines keep taking us in another direction.
And the more that they can focus on that stuff, the better they will be viewed actually in America too. And I think this is probably why America has warmed to Harry a bit more, because he's got the Invictus Games that he can fall back on. And Americans love the military. They're very supportive of the military, and they really respect what he's done with that. But yeah, I mean, Meghan could do with adding a couple more strings to her bow on this score, but I think it's good to see her trying to get back to that classic royal playbook of turning up and doing good and being seen to do good and looking fabulous doing it, is exactly what people love to see. And that's what people go to the monarchy for. You know, you wind the clock back like 5-6 years. The monarchy was like this happy place that people went to feel good about themselves, feel good about their relationships to their country, to feel good about, you know, to look at the fashion. And it was kind of like a happy place for people. And then over the last few years, it's become this incredibly, you know, a huge argument, everything blown up. It's open warfare at points between different wings of the family. But I mean, if Harry and Meghan could go back to that non-toxic, happy, positive way of doing business, I think it would actually be a huge boost to them on both sides of the Atlantic.
Kate?
Can't argue with that. I mean, I think they've thrown rocks at the wall for a long time. I was in Colorado with Harry 11 years ago when he went to visit the Warrior Games, which is the American...
That was the inspiration for this.
Exactly, and he said on the day, you know, I love this, I'm going to bring this home if you don't mind, and do it in Britain. And it has, you know, proper feather in his caps. You know, he has really, nobody can criticise him for this. No. It's been fantastic. But like you say, I think this is the sort of thing that he really needs to focus on. That sort of thing, you know, less about the kind of media, kind of, you know, the sort of big money deals to do Netflix series, you know, slating the rest of the family. You know, focus on what you're good at.
Good. Doing good.
And I think that would just stand them in so much stead, you know, good stead going forward.
Kate, Jack, thank you very much indeed for joining us this week. That is all we've got time for, but if you want to join in with the debate, please do leave a comment and make sure you subscribe if you don't want to miss a single episode. We will be back next week with all of the latest on the royal family. We hope you can join us. We'll see you then.